It sounds so simple. Eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full. But if this advice actually worked, you probably wouldn't be listening to this podcast. In our final episode of the Hunger series, we're going to dive in and explore why this oversimplified advice fails so many people and what to do instead. Welcome to Binge Eating Breakthrough, the podcast to help you stop feeling out of control around food and build trust with your body. If you've tried everything but still feel stuck, you're not alone. I've been there too. I'm Jane Pilger, and I'm here to help you see binge eating in a new way so you can finally break free. Each week, you'll get the tools and insights to create peace with food and your body. Your breakthrough starts now. Hello, trusted listener. I consider you a trusted listener because I trust that you've been on this journey with me through this entire Hunger series, building understanding layer by layer. But if you haven't, that's okay too. Even if you're just tuning in for this very first episode, I trust that you're ready to let go of oversimplified advice that doesn't account for the complexity of your lived experience. And I trust that you're ready for an approach that honors where you actually are, not where someone thinks you should be. So today we're wrapping up our deep dive into hunger, our last episode in this Hunger series. We're going to explore why one of the most common pieces of advice, eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full, doesn't work for so many people. And if this advice has ever left you feeling frustrated, confused, or like a failure, this episode will help you understand why it's not you, it's the advice. Now, if you haven't listened to any of the previous episodes in this Hunger series, no problem. This episode stands alone. But we have had some incredible conversations around hunger over the last many weeks. So I really encourage you to go back and check out any of the previous episodes if you haven't listened to them. I will link all of them in the show notes. All right, here's where I want to start with today's topic. Eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full. Sounds lovely in theory. It sounds natural, intuitive, and simple. And for some people, in some circumstances, it might even work. But for the vast majority of people who have struggled with their relationship with food, this advice is not just unhelpful. It can actually be harmful. Why? Because it makes assumptions about your experience that may not be true. And it ignores everything we've explored together in this series about the complexity of hunger, the impact of diet culture, and the reality of rebuilding trust with your body. So let's start with the first part. Eat when you're hungry. This assumes that you understand all the different types of hunger and can distinguish between them. But as we've explored throughout this series, there's physical hunger, there's emotional hunger, there's non-food hunger. Many people think that any desire to eat means they're hungry and they should eat. So they eat when they're hungry for connection, for expression, for rest, for comfort from sadness, as well as when they're physically hungry. And when people follow this interpretation of the advice, they often find themselves eating constantly and then feeling frustrated because they're gaining weight, feeling uncomfortable in their bodies, and thinking that they can't trust themselves. They conclude that they're broken or that intuitive eating doesn't work for them. And on the flip side, many people aren't connected to their hunger signals at all. Maybe they don't get clear signals. Maybe they've learned to ignore them. Or maybe they think any thought about food means they're hungry. Maybe they don't know how to distinguish between physical, emotional, or non-food hunger because no one has ever taught them that these distinctions exist. I once worked with a guy who sneezed when he got hungry. He didn't have any other signals from his body. No stomach rumbling, no energy dips, no mood changes, just sneezing. We always knew when lunchtime was approaching because he would start to sneeze. And this perfectly illustrates how different hunger signals can be from person to person, and how the advice to just eat when you're hungry assumes everyone experiences hunger the same way. And then there's what we talked about last week on the podcast, the hunger that no amount of food can satisfy. If you're trying to use food to meet an unmet need that food can't solve, you're never going to stop when you're full because you're not actually seeking physical satisfaction. You're seeking something deeper that food cannot provide. Now, speaking of stop when you're full, let's look at this second part. Stop when you're full. This assumes you have a clear connection with your satiety signals and can easily recognize when you're satisfied. But many people have no idea what satisfied feels like, especially if they've been dieting for years. It assumes you eat slowly and connectedly enough to be able to tune into those subtle signals. But if you're eating while you're distracted, eating quickly because you're afraid the food will be taken away, or you're eating while you're disconnected from your body, you're not going to notice those gentle cues. It also assumes that satisfaction is purely physical. But satisfaction actually involves mental satisfaction, variety, pleasure, and sometimes even social and cultural elements. You might be physically full, but mentally unsatisfied if you've been restricting certain foods or not allowing yourself pleasure in eating. This happens so often with people who eat the same foods over and over again, particularly those who eat them not because they enjoy them, but because they feel safe. But there's not that physical satisfaction. This advice also ignores the impact of diet culture and past experiences. You might have received messages to clear your plate. So stopping when you're satisfied might feel scary or wrong. You might not have emotional regulation skills. So when you're feeling big or overwhelming emotions, eating might be your only option for trying to feel better. You may have years of repeated neural patterns and pathways that have been reinforced through restriction, binging, and diet cycling. You might be completely disconnected from the signals your body sends due to trauma, stress, medication, or even medical conditions. The advice also assumes that everyone has the same hunger and fullness signals, but hunger might show up as energy changes, mood shifts, difficulty concentrating, or like the person I used to work with, even sneezing. Fullness might be felt in different parts of your body, or it might not be clearly noticeable at all. It doesn't account for the practical realities of life. Work schedules that don't allow you to eat when you're hungry. Social situations where food is available at specific times. Financial constraints that affect when and what you can eat. And perhaps most importantly, this advice can create more rules and rigidity when what most people actually need is flexibility and trust building. It doesn't address the why behind eating patterns. It just tries to control the when and how much. It ignores the social, cultural, and emotional aspects of eating that are a part of being human. I've worked with many clients who've tried approaches where you simply plan your food in advance, you only eat what you planned, and you follow the eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full rule. It sounds lovely, but in practice, many people struggle with it, and then they feel like failures because they can't make it work. Here's what I want you to understand. If this advice hasn't worked for you, it's not because you're broken, because you lack willpower, or you can't trust yourself. It's because the advice itself is oversimplified and it doesn't account for the complexity of your real experience. So you might be wondering, what do I suggest instead? What I suggest is what I call supportive structure, which I did talk about in a previous episode. I'll be sure to link it in the show notes. Now, this means having some guidelines about when and what you eat so that you can make sure to feed yourself regularly and consistently, while also developing trust with your body, safety with food, and connection with your internal signals. These three components are so key: trust with your body, safety with food, and connection with your internal signals. So instead of waiting for these perfect hunger and fullness cues that may not exist yet, you create a framework that ensures that your body gets consistent nourishment. This might mean eating every 3 to 4 hours, whether you feel hungry or not. It might mean including all food groups and not restricting foods that you really enjoy. It might mean eating at times that work with your schedule and your life, rather than waiting for your body to send signals it may not be able to send clearly yet. This approach allows you to rebuild trust with your body gradually. When your body knows it will be fed regularly and that no foods are off limits, it can start to relax and send signals that are more clear. When you're not in a constant state of restriction or fear around food, you can start to notice more subtle cues about what you need and when. This approach also acknowledges that rebuilding your relationship with hunger and satisfaction takes time, especially if you've been disconnected from these signals for years. It's not about following perfect rules. It's not about having a perfect plan. It's about creating safety and consistency while you learn to listen to your body again. It honors the complexity that we've explored throughout this entire series. It recognizes that there are different types of hunger that need different responses. It acknowledges that sometimes you'll eat for reasons other than physical hunger, and that's normal and human. And it understands that satisfaction involves more than just physical fullness. And most importantly, it meets you where you are, rather than where someone thinks you should be. If you don't have clear hunger signals, it doesn't ask you to wait for them. If you struggle with stopping when satisfied, it helps you create structure that prevents you from getting to extremes of hunger and fullness that make regulated eating more difficult. This approach requires doing the deeper work, understanding your patterns, healing your relationship with food, addressing the underlying emotional needs that might be driving certain eating behaviors, and rebuilding trust with your body, one consistent, supportive choice at a time. Now, throughout this series, we've explored your relationship with hunger, how it began in childhood, the different types of hunger you might experience, what to do when signals aren't clear, why ignoring hunger backfires, and the hungers that food can never satisfy. All of this complexity is why Eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full falls short for so many people. Your experience with food and with hunger is valid, even if it doesn't fit into simple rules. The goal isn't to follow perfect advice. It's to develop a relationship with your body based on trust, respect, and understanding. This means getting curious about your unique hunger signals, whether they show up as stomach sensations, energy changes, mood shifts, or even sneezing. It means learning to distinguish between different types of hunger and responding appropriately to each. It means creating structure and consistency while your body learns to trust you again. And it means understanding that rebuilding this relationship takes time, patience, and often support. It means letting go of the idea that there's a perfect way to eat and instead focusing on what helps you feel nourished, satisfied, and at peace with food. If you've been struggling to make eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full work for you, I want you to know that it's not your fault. This advice, while well-intentioned, simply doesn't account for the reality of what it's like to rebuild trust with your body after years of dieting, restriction, and disconnection. You deserve an approach that honors your complexity, meets you where you are, and supports you in developing a truly peaceful relationship with food. You deserve to understand why certain advice has not worked for you, and you deserve strategies that actually fit your real life and your real experiences. So this week, I invite you to reflect on this entire series on hunger. What has resonated with you? What insights have shifted your understanding of your own relationship with hunger? What would it look like to approach your eating with more curiosity and less judgment? Remember, your body is always communicating with you, even when those communications are subtle or different from what you might expect. Learning to listen with compassion and respond with care is a practice. This is not what is that word I'm looking for? We are not looking for perfection. Clearly that sentence was not perfection. It's practice, not perfection. If you want support in developing your own unique approach to eating that honors your individual experience and helps you to rebuild trust with your body, I invite you to reach out and schedule a breakthrough call with me. You don't have to figure this out alone, and you don't have to keep trying approaches that were not designed for your lived experience. I want to thank you for joining me on this deep exploration of hunger. Whether you have listened to this single episode or more, the entire series, or any of this series on hunger, my hope is that it has helped you to gain a much richer understanding of what it means to truly listen to and honor your body's signals in all of their complexity and wisdom. Your relationship with hunger is part of your larger relationship with yourself. Treat it with the care, curiosity, and compassion it deserves. And if you need assistance in learning how to do that, please reach out. All right, that's what I have for you. I'll see you next week. If you've been trying to stop binge eating and nothing has worked, there's a reason. I created the Binge Breakthrough mini-series to help you finally understand what's driving your binge eating beneath the surface so that you can actually start to change it. Each video is short, and they're designed to give you the clarity and direction you've been missing so you can stop feeling stuck and start finding your way out. Start watching now at janepilger.com/mini. That's janepilger.com/mini. MINI.